Welcome to Reality Check, a fresh look at Israel and the Middle East brought to you by AJC. Coming up in this edition, the malicious assumptions of the Goldstone report exposed.
The despots who run this council couldn't care less about Palestinians.
Has the time come to shut down the UN Human Rights Council? The latest twists in the Iranian nuclear crisis, and our recommendations of what's best on the net. This edition's special feature, Goldstone, Human Rights Gone Wrong.
In June last year, Judge Richard Goldstone and his team put on an eminently reasonable face when they arrived in Gaza.
We've come here to see, we've come here to learn, we've come here to talk to people in all walks of life.
But Desmond Travers, seen here standing next to Judge Goldstone, had already made up his mind. As recently revealed by the Jerusalem Centre for Public Affairs, the former colonel in the Irish Army was determined to convict Israel from the outset. Travers asked a group of Palestinian psychologists how Israeli soldiers could deliberately kill Palestinian children in front of their parents. The fact that such atrocities were never committed didn't stop the Goldstone report from accusing Israel of waging war on Palestinian civilians. Travers accused Israel of using unmanned aerial vehicles to target houses that were, he said, packed with people. In fact, the reverse was true. Israel did use unmanned aerial vehicles to confirm that civilians had evacuated houses in order to minimize innocent deaths. Travers said that something like 2 rockets fell on Israel in the month before Operation Cast Lead. The truth? There were 361 rockets fired by Hamas at Israel in December 2008. Travers insisted that there was no proof of Hamas using mosques to store weapons. But Hamas did just that in the mosque you see here and in dozens of other mosques. Goldstone's commission was made up of just 4 people, including Travers, and all of them shared his jaundiced view of Israel. This inbuilt bias didn't deter some elements of the media from portraying Goldstone as beyond reproach. Using anonymous sources, The Independent asserted that Israel rewrote the rules of war in Gaza, another outlandish claim from a newspaper which, in 2002, brought you the myth of a massacre by Israeli troops in the West Bank city of Jenin. The figures tell a different story. Of the approximately 1,200 Palestinians killed during Operation Cast Lead, at least 60% were combatants. Between 65 and 75% of those killed were men of military age, a fact which flatly contradicts Goldstone's judgment that Israel was indiscriminately targeting civilians. And if you compare Gaza with other anti-terrorist operations, Israel's restraint seems even more remarkable. When American troops attacked insurgents in the Iraqi city of Fallujah in 2004, 6,000 people died, well over half of them civilians. Despite being thoroughly discredited, the Goldstone report remains alive. It's being actively promoted in the European Parliament, and there's still a possibility that it will be brought before the UN Security Council. So here's a reality check. What starts with Israel won't end with it. As long as Goldstone casts its shadow, it's the democracies fighting terrorism who will be compromised, while the terrorists themselves hide among civilians in the name of human rights.
Here's this edition's comment on the platform.
When I visit the US, I hear certain activists complain that their voices are being muzzled. Well, let me tell you, I work at the UN Human Rights Council, where we bring victims of violations to speak. We know something about debate being shut down.
The despots who run this council couldn't care less about Palestinians or about any human rights. They seek to demonize Israeli democracy.
I will not tolerate any similar statements in the council.
In 2006, the UN's leading human rights body, the UN Human Rights Council, was reformed, or so we were promised. The reality is things got worse than they ever were before. The worst violators of human rights have been given a free pass. Talk about subjugation of women in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is a member of the Council. It's never been condemned once. Tibetans being persecuted in China, the issue is entirely ignored. You go around the world and the worst abuses, jailing of journalists and bloggers in Cuba, all of it's ignored. In fact, the Human Rights Council, the members, Pakistan, Cuba, China, Saudi Arabia, are spending all of their time attacking Israel, which has been targeted in 80% of the resolutions. It's a strategy to divert attention from the tyrannies, from the most repressive regimes, and to single out and target Israel. The Human Rights Council has key advisors. One expert is Jean Ziegler. He happened to co-found the Muammar Gaddafi Human Rights Prize. I'm not making that up. Another one of their leading experts is Richard Falk. He's someone who's famous for claiming that the 9/11 terrorist attacks were perpetrated not by Al-Qaeda, but by the US government and the Pentagon. The Human Rights Council once had investigators on some of the hotspots who were on their watch list, and systematically they've been dropped. So the investigator of abuses in Belarus, the last dictatorship in Europe, was eliminated. The investigator of human rights violations in Cuba was cut. The expert who monitors abuses in Congo, after he reported about atrocities happening there, they said, "Thank you very much, you're fired." The expert on Liberia, cut. The expert team on Darfur, cut. One by one, whatever element of scrutiny of the worst abusers was there has been eliminated. We're facing a situation where the dream of Eleanor Roosevelt is turning into a nightmare. Can we fix the Human Rights Council? There's a chance if the world's leading democracies, the US, the EU, Canada, Japan, rise to the occasion and turn its spotlight on the world's worst abusers, they can achieve some good. If not, shut it down.
Here's what's caught our eye on the net. If you want more analysis of the distortions of the Goldstone Report, then Understanding the Goldstone Report is the premier destination on the web. Visit goldstonereport.org for background papers, blogs, videos, and more. To read the Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs expose of Colonel Desmond Travers, visit jcpa.org. On Reality Check's YouTube channel, you can watch a special commentary by David Harris on the silence of the pro-Palestinian movement when it comes to Arab oppression of the Palestinians. Go to youtube.com/AJC Reality Check. And visit the Gallup polling organization to see which countries rate favorably among Americans. Israel ranks high, along with Canada and Japan, while Iran comes in at the bottom of the list. Go to gallup.com and search Image Contest. Finally, please join us at the AJC 2010 annual meeting in Washington, D.C. from April 28th to April 30th. You'll meet the people shaping policy and opinion both here and abroad. Israeli Defense Minister Ehud Barak, Israeli Ambassador to the U.S. Michael Oren, British attorney and author Anthony Julius, a special debate on Iran between New York Times columnist Roger Cohen and the Wall Street Journal's Bret Stephens, and much more. Visit ajc.org to register. You've been watching Reality Check from AJC.